Okay, so welcome to this meeting of the local pension board taking place on Microsoft Teams. This meeting is being webcast live to the public on YouTube. As it is the first meeting since the Pension Fund's annual general meeting, our first item of business is election of chairman. Can I ask for any nominations, please?
Nominate Mrs. Page.
Perfect. Can I have a seconder?
Yes, happy to second.
Perfect. So Mrs. Page is elected chairman until the fund's next annual general meeting. Over to you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much for that honour. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting. And we need to elect a vice chairman now. So may I please have a nomination?
I nominate Caroline.
Sorry, was that you, Manjit?
I nominate Caroline, please.
Yes, thank you. And I will second that from the chair. You're duly elected, Caroline.
Thank you. Thank you.
So here we are for another year. On to business. And my first order of business, besides welcoming you and looking forward to another successful meeting and thanking all of the officers and Kat and Ian for all the support and the brilliant work they have done. I would also like to pass on my thanks to Claire Scott, who was the independent advisor. And she had stepped down from her role, so she was invaluable to help us to achieve best practice. So looking forward to an update who's taking over eventually. But for now, thank you very much to Claire Scott. So we are then moving on to item 3, which are the minutes of the last meeting. And I propose that the minutes of the 8th of November 21 are taken and confirmed. So do we all agree? Yes, I see the nodding. So the minutes are agreed, and we move on to item 4, which is question time. So I have received no question. So therefore we move on to any other items. Advice to the chairman of urgent and as urgent, and there are none. And item 6 is the declaration in respect of any interest on any items. And I'm looking around, there are no declaration. So we are then swiftly moving on to item 7, which is on pages 9 to 28 on your agenda, and that is the Fund Administration Report to December 21, quarter 3, and that is over to Ian. And I apologise for looking down, but my papers are down here. So over to you, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I don't propose to go through the full report line by line. It's the same report in terms of the layout as I do to each of the board meetings. This is for the quarter October to December 21. What I was going to do is pick out the key points. If I may start with the sections key performance indicators, they're shown in Appendix A on page 21 of the report. I think it's safe to say it was a challenging quarter, but we maintained target or close to target in all areas. There was an unexpected drop in the areas around emails, but officers have done exploratory work around that and investigated it. And we have made some adjustments to some of the processes around the emails, particularly for people trying to get onto member self-service. We are continuing to track that. I can say that the January report, obviously the figures will be in the next quarter, but the January results have improved in that area. So that's pleasing to hear. In terms of workloads, they're detailed on pages 10 and 11 of the report. The main points to note our preserved benefits and aggregations, they remain high. We have had a concerted effort to reduce these over recent months, but they remain high, due to mainly the large volumes of retirements and deaths. So we still have a lot of resource in that particular area, but we are making a conscious effort, and we have made some further changes to the way that officers are dealing with preserved benefits and aggregations moving forward. And that will take us all the way through to August this year, which is the valuation time where we have to submit the data to the actuary. We've also started to look further into the areas of bulk processes, and I know that's something that Stuart will mention later. Bulk processes are whereby we can run certain cases in groups, so things like preserved benefits, we can run them in bulk cases rather than individual cases, which will help us. But there is still further work to do before we can really roll that forward around the reporting. But that's an exciting development that we're working hard on. In terms of the data improvement, which is section 11.11 on pages 12 and 13, I just wanted to highlight there's been a significant improvement in the areas around the monthly postings. We had a conscious push last quarter, and now we have 92% of all the employers in the fund posting monthly, which is excellent. So that's 170 of the 184 employers are now posting monthly, and that's now covers 96% of active members in the pension fund, which is truly remarkable, really, from where we were only a year, 18 months ago. So huge credit to the team that have been involved in that area. In terms of audit, there were 2 internal audits in the quarter. The first one was on contribution bandings. This is where the auditors pick a sample of different payrolls and make sure that the people are effectively paying the right contribution rates. There were some discrepancies found on one of the payrolls, the non-school payrolls. There were a couple of cases that didn't reconcile. So there's further work taking place on that. It is safe to say, though, this was actually done on the first month of the new payroll. So we do believe there may have been some data issues around that. But principally, I'm comfortable with it. There was just those 2 queries that we're looking at in more detail. And we did the counter fraud, the National Fraud Initiative work, which highlighted 4 cases. I think these were mentioned in an earlier report when we were talking about risk. What has come from that is we've made a change to the frequency on how often we do the National Fraud Initiative checks. Instead of these now being done once every 2 years, they're now done twice a year, which allows us to pick up deaths that were not reported to us more quickly. These tend to be cases whereby normally overseas deaths where we're not notified. So that should help us resolve those cases hopefully more quickly. There was a significant change in terms of the regulations that was made on the 30th of November regarding transfers out and scams. Stuart is going to detail that in much more detail in his improvement report, so I wasn't going to propose to talk about that at this particular point. The GAD 13 report results were published. There was a lot of detail, and there's a huge amount of information in there that I wasn't going to propose to cover in this meeting, but there is an awful lot there. The important point to note, and this is the really key message, is the Leicestershire Fund scored what they call green flags, which is a pass effectively in every area. So that's really good news, really good to hear. And the other point really just to mention is when you use the government's own actuarial assumptions and methodology, the Leicestershire Fund increased from 89% funded to 103% funded. So a pleasing outcome, I think it's safe to say. The other key point I wanted to mention, or key points I wanted to mention, was the Pension Regulator's Code of Practice. That's on point 32 to 35. The Pensions Regulator has now completed the consultation on amalgamating their codes of practice into one single code. It's also going to bring some new areas. We haven't got all the detail yet, nobody has, but we're being given sort of drip-fed information, and there certainly will be new areas, particularly around things like cyber security, and it may also touch on particular areas of investment as well. More to follow. It's going to be a significant piece of work, this. We need to do a review of the new code of practice, and one of the areas that Declan is keen to have, and this touches on the next report when I'll talk about this in more detail, is we propose a deep dive for the board, so an area that the board can really kind of get the teeth into in the full year. And I would propose we use the code of practice as that area because it's wide ranging, covers a lot of areas, and it will be quite an interesting area for us to work through with yourselves. So that I will touch on at the next report. But we look forward to seeing what the actual final code will look like. And then my final point really is around the governance of employer risk, which is in every report, as you know well. There are two cases that remain high risk that I wanted to particularly raise with yourselves for awareness. The first one is the life mat to total swim. Now, since I wrote this report, there has been developments on this one, and I spoke to our lawyers only this morning, and they believe that this one will actually be completed in the next 2 weeks. So that one is now in hand. The next one on the list, which is actually listed as the Mead Education Trust, that's actually a typo, and apologies, that should be the Met Education Trust, to Taylor Shaw. That one we are having problems with. We're not having problems with Met. Met are engaged with us. Their member of staff who was dealing with it has left and passed it on to somebody else, and that's caused a little bit of a delay, but they are engaged. But Taylor Shaw, we aren't getting anything from at all, I'm afraid. We've been trying and we're getting nothing back. If it's okay with yourselves, I would propose that I use the letter that we've used before in these cases. So it's written on behalf of the board and myself, and I send that to Taylor Shaw to raise our concerns, if that's okay with you all. That is really all I had in terms of the key points, but clearly I'm happy to take any questions on any of the areas that I've gone through, or indeed not gone through. Any of the points in there, happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Ian. Yes, and do go ahead and send that letter because there were nods all around.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Because as always, it has been very comprehensive. There are none, Ian, so you can swiftly... Oh, hang on. Yes, Councillor Shepherd, over to you.
Just to say, if I may, well done on getting a green flag. Very good news.
Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that, Councillor Shepherd. Thank you.
I muted myself, so thank you for that. And oh, Ruth, you've just appeared. Your hand. Hello, Ruth. You ask your question.
Thank you, Chair. Ian, could I just, it's a point of clarification really. On the report, I noticed for December, the number of cases for retirements and deaths that you've got outstanding at the end of the month is higher than you would like them to be compared to your target. But it looks from the KPIs, you're still able to process them within the timeline. So people are still getting their retirement payments within the 10 days following retirement. I just wanted clarification.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Ruth. No, that's a good question.
Whilst you've still got a high volume, you are managing still to achieve the performance indicators. That's the members that they get obviously their benefits.
Yeah, indeed, completely, Ruth. I completely echo that. I mean, this is really why preserved benefits and aggregations are suffering, Ruth, because at the end of the day, the most important point really is paying members' benefits timely and accurately. So we will always prioritise retirements and deaths. Unfortunately, because we have so many, which is just the reality of the situation, it's not something we can deal with or change. You know, this is the numbers that are retiring and going through the process. We have to have the relevant resource there. Unfortunately, that means more resource being taken from the aggregations and preserved benefits. But that's the reality of the situation. But in terms of making payments to the members, getting them processed, we are still making deadlines on those because they are the priority.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you for that, Ruth. And as there are no further questions, we're moving over to agenda item 8. That is Ian again, starting on page 29 to page 50. And that is the business plan and the budget 22 to 23. Over to you, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I wouldn't propose to go through every line, but again, if I may pick out the key points, if I may. This is being presented to the board for noting and for any comments. It will then go to committee in March for approval. There are two business plans. There's the administration business plan and the investments business plan as well. I won't propose to go through every single line of those because they're obviously within the actual report, but the particular bits I did want to highlight, if I may. In the administration business plan, there are 3 points I really wanted to raise with you all. The national dashboards. This is new. This is what's been quoted as the biggest change to pensions administration ever. So it's not small. It's effectively whereby any person within the UK can log in through one website effectively. So they'll have one login, and within that login they will then be able to see all of their pensions throughout the UK. So from there they will see, so say for example the person has worked for say two authorities, just for argument's sake, say they work for Leicestershire and Nottinghamshire, they'll go through this unique login. It's secure clearly, and then they'll see their two benefits. And if they worked in private firms as well, let's say Boots or Raleigh or someone like that, and they had pension benefits with them, they would also see those. So all the information is available for people to see all of their pension benefits through one unique login, and that's called the dashboard. Obviously, we need to work to ensure that our members are able to see their information through the dashboard as well. There'll be clearly lots of work going on in the background around this, and there's going to be a lot of system work involved. So that's a huge exercise for us within the year. It doesn't go live until the following year, but there's going to be a lot of work done this year in preparation for that. The other ones I've touched on briefly in the earlier report, so I won't dwell on them. The Pension Regulator Code of Practice, as I mentioned earlier on, that's a big piece of work for the year. And with your approval as a board and chair's approval as well, the deep dive for the board, which I would like to concentrate that on the TPR's Code of Practice, as I said earlier, because it's wide ranging, and I think that will be, you know, really beneficial for you all. On the investment business plan, again, there's a few key areas I wanted to pick out. The first one being the continuous training of the board and committee. One of the duties of ourselves and yourselves as board and obviously committee members as well is to ensure that you are up to speed with pensions rules, regulations, and certain areas around that. I won't dwell on all of it, but the three key areas that I think I would like to highlight in that particular area is linked to the Hyman's online training. Excuse me. Module 2, which is governance, module 4, which is funding and actuarial, and module 5, which is investments. And I do get to see the results come through every month of board and committee members and indeed officers work on the Hyman's training, and I would like to just concentrate those particular areas moving forward for you all, if that's okay, just to move us through this next period of time. The other two areas are the climate strategy for the fund, which is a very large piece of work that my colleague Bulash will lead on, and the valuation, which it goes without saying the valuation is huge and is critical for the funding for the overall fund and indeed all the employer rates from April next year. That's also in the business admin plan as well. The report also provides details of the budget, the 21-22 budget and forecast, and indeed the proposed budget for the following 3 years. In terms of the admin side of the budget, all of the areas are on target for the 21-22. That's staffing, IT, actuarial and support services. For the investment side, there is an approximate £3.5 million increase over the budget in 21-22 due to the performance of the investment management expenses. My colleague Bulash is on the call as well, should you have any particular questions on the investment side of the budget. That is all I was going to propose to say, but obviously happy to take any questions on any of the points I've discussed or anything within the report itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian, very much appreciated again. As members of the committee will have noticed, there's also an attachment, Pension Administration Business Plan, starting on page 35. So are there any questions on the report or on the business plan? And I see Caroline's hand has come up. Caroline, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. It's just really to make a bit of a statement in, because having gone through your business plan, I do have to say, exceptionally comprehensive. I think you've detailed absolutely all of the right things. But when you look at the list, it shouldn't be underestimated the amount of work that you face as a service within the coming months. So it's okay looking at a list, but what sits behind that list is real significant pieces of work. So hopefully in terms of your budget and your staffing, you do feel supported, that you have adequate resources to be able to work successfully through the business plan that you've put together.
Thank you, Caroline. Firstly, can I say thank you for your comments? I do appreciate that. I am a little concerned this year moving forward into 22-23. I will be honest. We do have a very significant number of big projects. Dashboards is very, very big. McLeod, which I've not even touched on, which is already huge, and the pension regulator dashboard are going to be all significant areas of work over and above the business as usual. I am concerned around the valuation, Caroline, in truth. The valuation data has to go off by the 31st of August, and we do have to have a really large concerted effort on getting as many of those levers done correctly so the data is as accurate as possible for the valuation data to be submitted. It is a really, really tight pinch point this year, and I'm not going to pretend it's not. I do have overtime available for the whole section up until the end of August, but I am very conscious that is a lot of pressure for a lot of, a team of a significant team, don't get me wrong, but it is still a lot of pressure for a team. I am going to monitor the resource carefully over the coming months, and I'm also going to do a value for money statement, which is something I need to do for the annual report anyway, Caroline, and I am going to look carefully at that. But I do anticipate there will be an increase in our costs this year in comparison to previous years. And whilst we all have to be very careful and monitor costs carefully, and we all have to, I accept that totally, I do feel that we will spend higher in terms of administration this time around to try and help resolve some of the pressures we'll be under.
I mean, appreciating in your position, absolute confidence in you in terms of leading and managing the pension service. But as we know, and I think, you know, what you've been able to do today is give the board assurance, really, that your approach is one of not only trying to ensure the best to our ability to get the task done, but also the health and well-being of the staff as well, to make sure that, you know, people are able to deliver within their roles. So thank you. And if there's anything we can do as a board to help support any issues that come up in the next few months to do with this, then I'm sure we'll be able to hopefully agree something. Thank you,
Caroline. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Caroline, and that's a great value of having you on board as well. Over to Manjit.
Thank you, Chair. I echo everything that Caroline said in terms of the team, the work you've done, Ian, and what you've delivered as part of the team as well. I'm just going to pick up on a couple of points there, Ian, that you mentioned about the priorities that you've got for the team over the next period of time. And I guess there's some risks involved in there, as you've said, in terms of achieving those targets and delivering on those things, the dashboard and the valuation in particular. You mentioned that you've got overtime available. Do you think you need to look at anything else in terms of additional short-term resourcing to ensure that you meet those targets that have been set, or you think everything is in hand? It sounds as though it is, but I just wanted to explore that with you to see if there's anything else we could help you with, or
Yeah, thank you, Manjit. I think as I am today, I'm comfortable,
okay.
But I think I will be. Well, I know I'm going to review this. We're actually going to review this on a weekly basis, in actual fact, Manjit, myself and the management team. But in terms of when I think we will be better placed, will be probably at the end of April.
Okay.
Because by the end of April, Manjit, we'll know the quality of the data that's coming in from the employers for the year end, and indeed whether it's coming in time. That always gives us a better position in terms of how the situation looks moving forward.
Sure.
If it's generating more queries than it's resolving in terms of quality of data, then I do think we might need additional short-term resource to help us through to the end of August, in truth. But as it is currently now, I'm reasonably comfortable. Whilst we have a lot of pressures, we will manage them and prioritise accordingly. But I will keep that under very close review moving forward.
No, that's really helpful. And I think the board generally, and we all have confidence in you and your team. So in terms of all the work you've done, so we're happy that I'm certainly happy that you manage all of that. It's just a case of giving you the opportunity to think about anything else that needs to be done beforehand. And especially, I guess, when it comes to June, July, there's holidays and things. But I'm sure you've got all those things factored into your plans anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I assume we will know by the next meeting in May as well, where Ian no doubt will mention if there is anything he will require. Just to round off agenda item 8, Ian mentioned module 2, 4 and 5, which need to be completed in the training. And I hold my hand up because whenever I have the time on a Sunday night, I can't get in or whatever. And so I don't think I have done all 3. I've done some. But if you need any help, do please contact Kat or, the password. And Kat will send out a reminder as well. So thank you again, Ian, for that. And we are now moving over to our pensions project manager, Stuart. Stuart Wells, where are you? Item 9, continuous improvement, pages 51 to 64 on your agenda. Over to Stuart, who I can't see, but I'm sure you're there. Saw you earlier.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Just make sure my camera is on. Yep. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So taking I do intend to go through each section, albeit some briefer than others, but taking the first 2 proper items on the report, member self-service and improvements to the starter process together. Currently, work has been ongoing since the last meeting in respect of amendments to the current process with regards to the documentation that is provided to new scheme joiners. And this is with two aims in mind. Firstly, to reduce the amount of paper forms and documents that are coming into the office. But secondly, and linking back to the previous item, to increase MSS registration for those new starters. So briefly, just going back to the member self-service, that the registration numbers do continue to rise each quarter. The increases are steady rather than spectacular, but we hope that by placing a greater focus on member self-service for those new joiners, that we can capture some of those staff as soon as they become members of the pension scheme. So currently what we do, pensions issue a welcome to the scheme letter along with a membership form. And the welcome letter confirms when the employee became a member of the LGPS, and also covers information on how to register for MSS, along with some information regarding the scheme. The membership form covers further information about the LGPS, an opportunity to tell us about any previous pension benefits that they may have, either from other LGPS funds or public sector pension schemes. There's also a death grant nomination form that allows the member to tell us who they would wish their death grant to be paid to in the event of their death, although the fund does retain ultimate discretion regarding this. And the form also requests that members supply copies of birth and marriage certificates for our records. And the idea is that from April, we're going to move a lot of this information online. So the plan is to issue a shorter welcome letter that simply confirms membership and also instructs the member that they will need to register for member self-service. So that the message about MSS will be strengthened compared to what we're currently mentioning on the letter. It also provides a link and a QR code on the letter to try and make that opportunity to go straight to the website a little easier. And the idea is that once the member has registered, they'll be advised to go to a new area of the website where they can access all the information that was previously provided through the membership form. So there'll be a guide to the scheme, and those forms will be there online, so that they can download those and either fill them in and upload them, or simply print them off and return them. At this stage of membership, of the person's membership, we will no longer request birth and marriage certificates. So this is because their date of birth has already been provided and verified to us by their employer as part of the recruitment process, and their marital status is not particularly relevant at this stage of the process. And this information is also requested when benefits are due to be paid, as part of our due diligence checks before issuing any payments of benefits. If the member doesn't have access to the internet, they are invited to give us a call, and we will issue paper equivalent documents to them. So I want to touch on the insights reporting tool that's been mentioned in the past. So this has now been purchased. Hayward, the scheme administrators, have provided 3 initial training sessions to those officers who will be responsible for developing reports of their own, and several reports have been earmarked for internal development. Hayward are also assisting officers on 2 reports specifically for the Leicestershire Fund, One is around the reconciliation of pension and payroll and the admin system, with the aim of putting in place automatic notifications to officers whenever any discrepancies arise between the two systems. And in an initial version as currently available, and we're looking at fine-tuning that to ensure it does exactly what we want. The second report is, and going back to what Ian mentioned about bulk processes, the second report is to assist officers with checking calculations that are processed in bulk and automatically runs comparisons between some of the data on the system, pension contributions and care pay, to make sure that the contributions taken on the care pay looks reasonable. And there's an inbuilt allowance for a level of tolerance within those figures that can be amended as we see fit. And these bulk calculations will be mainly performed on cases where data has been submitted through iConnect, and the report will help give officers assurance that the data provided is reasonable. The intention is that once the report is signed off, which should hopefully be around the end of the month, that those employers will no longer need to provide the paper or email leaver forms that they're currently providing, where those members are under 55 and all their data has already been supplied through the iConnect system. Moving on to the customer satisfaction surveys, although the number of customer satisfaction surveys increased in the last quarter, numbers do remain relatively low, and we're continuing to monitor those numbers to try and, at the moment they are less than ideal, but we are keeping an eye on that. Cybersecurity, so an annual review of the pensions information security risk assessment was conducted by LCC's information governance team in October 21. So this was a year on from the last review. This was essentially a light touch review following the previous years, essentially ensuring that the ISO certifications were up to date. And the next review is due this October, later in the year. The main part of this report this time is around the changes to transfer legislation, which again Ian's already previewed. So the changes to the legislation relating to the transfer of pension benefits came into force on the 30th of November last year. And these introduced restrictions to the scheme members' statutory right to transfer by giving funds the power to act where suspicions about the circumstances surrounding the transfer have been identified, meaning that payment of the transfer can be stopped. So previously this wouldn't have been the case. A member would have had a statutory right to transfer. So regardless of our concerns, they could have insisted that a transfer would go through. And an example of these type of circumstances is where a transfer to an occupational pension scheme has been requested, but it's not clear that the company that the member claims to work for exists. So we do get very, very rare, but that kind of situation has occurred in the past. The legislation introduces the concept of red and amber flags. So where a transfer to is to a scheme other than to public sector schemes, or there's two other types of schemes highlighted as low risk of the scheme. So where that occurs, as I say, that would be classed to be a red flag. But red flags can also include where the member was contacted by a financial advisor out of the blue, so unsolicited advice, or was offered an incentive to make a transfer. If a red flag does exist, reasons for stopping the transfer will need to be clearly documented by officers. And where these concerns arrive, officers would have contacted the member verbally, in addition to the various documentation that we already request, to try and get as much information about them before reaching any conclusion. Obviously, we wouldn't make such a decision lightly. Amber flags are obviously less serious than red flags, and tend to be where the scheme member has provided the requested information, but there's a lack of clarity or vagueness to what has been provided. And in those cases, we would direct them to an organisation called Money Helper for further advice. And Money Helper is an independent body set up by the government, and they can help to identify common risks associated with transfers, go through the dangers of scams, and allow the member to decide whether or not to proceed. And where someone has been directed to Money Helper, they will be given a unique reference number, which will need to be provided to the fund as evidence that the appointment took place. And failure to produce that reference, again, would be considered a red flag and grounds for stopping the transfer. It's worth noting that most transfers will continue to be straightforward. And this legislation introduces the concept of clean lists for the funds, and schemes that are identified as low risk can be added to a clean list, and this will allow for a smoother transfer process, as the schemes would have been previously identified as trouble-free. Of course, the clean list would need to be reviewed regularly to ensure that they continue to be considered low risk. So currently, officers are currently looking at how to put all this into place, starting initially with a review of the schemes that transfers have been paid to previously, and where there are no issues, it's likely that they will be added to our clean list. The list will also feature bank details, so that these can be checked before payments are made to ensure that this hasn't changed. We're also in the process of updating documents to comply with the new legislation, and it's likely that the due diligence process that we have in place will evolve as cases come in under the new legislation. At the time of writing, only one case has been paid under the new regulations, and this didn't raise any flags, which is likely to be the case still for most of them. The Local Government Association are also working on the creation of a transfer pack, which is designed to replace their existing forms, which we currently adapt. The introduction of this pack is also intended to simplify the process to a degree, though it's likely to be up to 6 months before that pack is ready for use. And I just wanted to touch upon a related issue, a draft bill that introduces an increase in the normal minimum pension age from 55 to 57 from April 28, also refers to the introduction of a protected minimum pension age of 55 for members that were in pension schemes prior to November 21. And where these members transfer to other schemes, it may be the case that additional information may need to be supplied to the new scheme where the member has met the entitlement condition in the LGPS. So there's further changes that we will also likely to be made to the transfer process, and we'll continue to monitor those as well and make the necessary changes when required. So that was all I really wanted to cover today. Does anyone want to ask any questions?
That is very well covered. Thank you very much, Stuart. And the first hand up is Councillor Shepherd. Over to you, please.
Thank you. I'm referring to sections 48. And I may have missed something here. I thought Stuart mentioned an age of 55. 57 is in the text. I probably missed some points you made to it. Could you just repeat that for me?
Yeah, so they're looking to increase so currently the minimum pension age is 55.
Yes.
So there's a draft bill that's looking to increase that to 57.
Okay, fine.
But at the same time that they're looking to introduce a protected minimum pension age for those members of pension schemes that were in the schemes before November 2021, which would bring that to 55 for those members. So where those members exist and they transfer out of the LGPS, we will need to include that extra information that they are protected under this draft proposal.
That's fine, thank you. Yes, yeah. I was sort of looking at the text and I thought, oh, 55. Okay, thank you, Stuart. That's clear. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Over to Ruth, please.
Thank you, Chair. Stuart, it was just to say, fully support the approach that you're proposing regarding, you new starters and the member self-service. I think, that sort of mirrors, how people sort of deal with administration nowadays across the board, isn't it? Sort of more self-service and using portals. So fully support your proposals there. And then just secondly on, the transfers, and I'm sure we would, we all welcome the legislation to protect members, but are you able to provide any sort of scale in terms of how many do you think that you're going to have to sort of, carry out additional work and potentially stop? Or is it too early to say at this stage? And it comes back to Caroline's point earlier in the meeting around the overall resources that are available, within the team that you have, if this is going to cause, significant additional work for yourselves. Sure.
I mean, but based on the troublesome cases that we have at the moment, that they're extremely low. They are extremely low. Thankfully, this isn't a regular occurrence. Be difficult for me to put a particular number on it, but there tends to be probably less. I'm going to put a number on it anyway. They're probably less than about 5 each year. I would say.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That are particularly troublesome. So yeah, when these cases do come along, they can get somewhat involved. But yeah, they are pretty few and far between. So I think what's going to be key is ensuring that a clean list is kept up to date, so that we don't have to make people jump through hoops unnecessarily. So if someone was transferring to Next, say, to go to the extent that they would need to go to if it was a particularly obscure pension scheme, would probably be unreasonable. So we want to make sure that we get the balance right with that whilst following the legislation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Ruth. And for members who are interested, Stuart added on page 61, Appendix A, statistics of the self-service. Ruth, is that an old hand, or would you like to come back?
Sorry, that's an old hand.
Oh, okay, thank you. So there are no further questions on this report. Thank you very much, Stuart, and I hope members will look at the minutes or to the recording, because these comprehensive reports and explanations must make them feel very assured that their pensions are in very good, capable hands. Thank you. So I now move to item number 10 on our agenda, page 65 to 72, and that is the revised training policy, and we are back to Ian. Ian, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an update really, Chair and board members, in terms of the training policy. This covers members for board and committee. Now, as officers, we appreciate there is a great deal of information in regarding pensions, and it's wide ranging, it's diverse, and it can be quite complex, or indeed very complex in particular areas. So we've tried to hopefully help board and committee members with the proposed training policy in regards to the introduction of the Hyman's online training, which we've touched on previously. Now, I know the many of you have done, some have done all of it, and some have done some of it, and it's really just to kind of concentrate efforts in addition to the face-to-face training to yourselves from officers and from local government association, etc., by having the online training available. And section 11 of the report mentions the 6 modules on the Hyman's training. Module 1 is the introduction to the LGPS. Module 2, LGPS governance and oversight bodies. 3 is the administration and fund management. 4, funding and actuarial matters. 5, investments, and 6, current issues. And it's really to highlight those particular areas. And as I've mentioned in the earlier report, concentrate really your efforts on modules 2, 4, and 5. They are probably the most useful. I mean, it's all useful. I think it's all very, very good, but they're probably the most useful in terms of the key areas moving forward. Module 6, current issues. Well, I'm going to pick up a lot of those at the training after this meeting anyway, so I'll pick up the current issues. So it's really those 2, 4, and 5 are the particularly useful ones that I would like to highlight to you all. In terms of how this is taken forward, you're asked to kind of comment and make any comments you wish on the training policy, and then it's going to go to committee in March, where it will be seek approval. So that's really all I wanted to say on this particular item, but I'm obviously happy to take any questions, Chair.
And again, Appendix A, starting on page 69, gives the draft training policy. So over to members. Are there any questions? There are none, and obviously we will have Ian giving us a short training session after we close the meeting, so you can put them on the rack then. Thank you for that, Ian. And we are moving swiftly on to your next report, which is page 73 to 90, and that is the risk management and internal controls agenda item 11. Over to you again, working for your money.
Thank you, Chair. This is the standard risk register that we bring to all the board and committee meetings. Following the last board meeting that we had in November, we've made some changes, and because there's a fair few changes, actually, I thought it was easier to actually highlight them actually within the report itself, rather than try and ask you to find them in the actual report, in the actual appendix, in the risk register itself. So if I may go through them briefly. Risk 2 is the pension fund's failure to receive accurate and timely data from employers. So therefore, scheme members' benefits could be late or indeed incorrect. We believe this is low already, and we have got good controls in here. But the use of the bulk process to enable greater automation and less requirement from fund employers for certain leavers, relying on the iConnect submissions, is going to be a really big step for us. So this touches on what Stuart was talking about earlier, about the idea or the proposal not to have additional leavers information requesting certain information from the effectively asking employers to submit more information to us. We're going to be relying more on the automation from iConnect. So that will actually help the employers, and it will also help us. So that's designed to be a win-win, but we believe the risk is being controlled. One thing I would like to say, though, Internal audit will be involved in this as well. We're not going to do this without their view and their take on this, because it's an important change there. The McLeod remedy, increased administration. This is to pick up the point that was raised by the board at the last meeting to incorporate the 2016 cost cap, the potential changes that could create, as well as the McLeod. Risk 7, the transfers around the no win, no fee firms, the CMCs as they're called. This is regarding historic transfers. I think I've mentioned this before, where we've had 2 cases brought against us so far, where one individual company is representing 2 people who transferred benefits out historically many years ago, and they're now trying to say that effectively the fund didn't follow due process and shouldn't have paid those transfers. So we have an external legal company working with us who are specialists in this area, but it's to highlight that as a risk, because there may be future ones that we may receive. The failure to identify the death of a pensioner causing an overpayment. This again relates back to a report that we talked about earlier, where we're increasing the NFI work, and this will now take place twice a year rather than once every 2 years. And the final one, human error in the pension section when calculating and paying a pension. This follows the overpayment of the widow's short-term pension, where it was continued to be paid in error. The long-term pension wasn't brought into payment, so the short-term pension continued. And this also links back to what Stuart was talking about, whereby we are looking to develop more around the insight reports to identify cases like this more quickly and more easily. And Stuart has developed a new policy that was taken through to committee for dealing with over and underpayments, and that was approved at the last meeting. So we've done actually quite a lot of work around risk in the last 3 months since the last meeting to incorporate comments from the last board and the issues that were raised. So happy to take any questions.
As I said to you yesterday on my briefing, I really like this revised risk register. I think it's good governance. It's brilliant to have it in front of us in paper form. And I know these risks probably remain static like McLeod, but I think it would be nice if anything else creeps up to have this kind of report again. I think it really shows that we are on the ball. Yeah, I like this. So hands up to anybody who has any questions to Ian. You've done a marvellous job again, Ian. Thank you very much. And that completes agenda item. Yes, and look, Manjit is clapping. I don't know how to do that.
And we deal with that through a forum called the Joint Committee. It's complicated a little by the fact that LGPS Central is also partly owned by the Leicestershire County Council and 7 other local authorities. So we have an interest from a shareholder's perspective, and that interest is taken care of by the shareholders forum. So we've got the Joint Committee and the shareholders forum. So this paper here updates you on the things that have gone on since the last update. So if I just scroll down to page 93, item 10, a Joint Committee did occur in June 2021. These meetings are clerked by Cheshire in every instance, and you've got a link there. So if you do want to go through and have a look at the minutes, we've got all of that lined up there. Point 12 quickly talks about some actions that took place during that meeting. We take public questions. It is a public meeting, and you'll note that there were 10 public questions submitted in advance of the Joint Committee, and they covered things like the public asking about how we deal with investments in arms companies, fossil fuel companies, human rights, etc. And LGPS Central prepare answers to each of these questions in line with the partner fund's wishes. They're circulated in advance, and we all sign off on it, and they're read out. And it's a public response from a joint 8 local authorities in the main. We also give a practitioners advisory forum update. So PAF, as it's known, is made up of a person from each of the 8 local authorities. It then talks about what we've done in the last 6 months with the company, which products are coming to market, i.e. we're all after a private debt product. What's the progress like? How much does it cost? What the performance is like across all the products. So the joint committee get a view of all the products and the processes and the kind of developments that have happened in the time since the last joint committee. Our representative on the joint committee is the shareholder, who is Mr. Tom Barclay, Councillor Tom Barclay, since Peter stepped down. So that's who attends for us alongside one of the officers. I've got a little section here on a special resolution update that went through in August 2021, and that was regarding how LGPS Central charge each local authority. They were charging us at a fixed markup of around 20%. What that does mean is that each of the local authorities pay more, and they were proposing we move that 20% markup to 10%. It's a win-win all round. We pay less to the company as a result, and they make less profit and therefore pay less tax. And given we're the owners of the company, it's the right thing to do. They had taken advice from PwC, the tax advisor on the matter, and 10% was deemed to be an appropriate level of profit to be made. Points 18 and 19 talk about the AGM, the annual general meeting that happened in September 2021. 19 talks about the resolutions that were passed, so fairly standard: re-election of all the directors, adoption of the company report, and approval of the individual remuneration packages for the chair and the 2 directors. The next meeting is due to be held next Tuesday, 22nd, represented by the chairman for the pension committee, again, Councillor Barclay. And there'll be a number of resolutions that are proposed at that point, including the budget to run LGPS Central in the coming year. We'll update again on this format in about 6 months, I think. So you'll have another joint committee and the update from the company meeting, which is, like I said, next Tuesday. Happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you. Very interesting, Bulesh, and I do like the list of questions reflected. Any hands? There are no hands. Again, another wonderful job. Well done. Thank you, Bulesh.
Thank you, Chair.
So, another clap for Manjit. So that is now, I'm out of breath. I had to run to fetch my charger. I had to virtually fly down the stairs, and the last time I did that, I broke my leg. Item 13, which is the date of the next meeting, which is 10 a.m, 4th of May, again on Teams, which is very handy. Well, certainly for me. There are no other items which are urgent, except, as always, to thank all the officers and all of the members who are on this call. Much appreciated. And I close this meeting, and we stay on with Ian providing us with some short training. So